As it is our first time, as Taryn said, please bear with us if we do encounter any glitches along the way, but we're in good hands with Taryn and Tynan to get us out of any little fixes. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with Zoom by now. These days, we're all doing it, but for those of you who may not be quite so familiar, we have some techie tips to ensure you have the best virtual experience and to allow this meeting to run smoothly. In order to see the full screen of the current speaker, click Speaker View at the top right of your Zoom screen. And for more streamlined gallery view, you can click on the Hide Non-Video Participants button. You can choose to leave your video on or off during the meeting, which is usually at the bottom left of your Zoom screen. However, we will be recording the meeting, so if you don't want to have your face potentially in the recording, then please feel free to turn off the video. Everyone will start out as muted, as you can see. But if you do want to ask the speaker a question, or if you do want to affirm a motion, then please unmute yourself and then mute yourself again once you finish speaking. We have 3 motions to approve this evening, and we'll be using polls to do that. Please only affirm and vote on motions if you are a member of the society. This means either you've paid for your membership during registration or you're an active volunteer. How that's going to work is we're going to ask for someone to affirm the motion and then a person to second. If you would like to do that, please unmute yourself, say your full name along with first or second, so we can record that information for the meeting minutes. The poll will then appear and you can choose your response. If you're not a member, just disregard the poll. At any time, if you have any questions you'd like to ask the presenter, or if you have a technical question that you don't need to interrupt the person speaking, please use the chat function, which is in the bottom middle of your screen. So I can see lots of old friends. It's kind of nice to see everyone this way, actually. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us and your continued support for RJV. For those of you who are joining us for the first time at an AGM, welcome. I hope that this will give you a good overview of our organization and all that we've accomplished over the past year or so. And although she's not able to join us in person, we are very glad and pleased to share a message from Mayor Lisa Helps. And I'll get Taryn to put that video up for us now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa Helps, and I'm the Mayor of Victoria, and I'm really happy to be with you for your AGM this evening. I want to acknowledge that we're here on the Lekwungen speaking people's homelands, the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations. I just wanted to come this evening to bring some brief greetings and some thanks. The City of Victoria has funded the Restorative Justice Program for a number of years. And I wanted to say that we are pleased, on behalf of myself and council, pleased to support this work. And also I wanted to say how grateful I am for the work you do. As the co-chair of the Victoria Esquimalt Police Board, we get an annual update and report on the work of Restorative Justice Victoria. And the work that you do is transformative. It's so important that people have access to restorative justice, both on the perpetrator side and the victim side. Because if there's one thing that's missing in our world right now, it's the opportunity to sit down and have that important, heartfelt dialogue, to be vulnerable, to be heard. And you do all of those things just by the way that you run your program. So thank you very much for your hard work this past year. Thank you for the service to our community, and I hope that you have a very good AGM this evening.
Great, thank you, Taryn, and thank you to Mayor Helps and to the entire council of City of Victoria and also the Township of Esquimalt who have supported us for many years. Needless to say, the pandemic has upended our normal operations this year, and like so many organizations, we've had to pivot very quickly to a new way of delivering our services while keeping everyone safe. To say that it's been challenging is an understatement, given that so much of what we do is bringing people together face to face. However, we continue to learn together and be creative and make the most of new technologies to do our work. On that note, I would like to acknowledge the ingenuity and diligence of our staff who have been working even harder these past several months. We have a small staff, but they are mighty, and I would like to take a few moments to introduce them to you now. So when I call out your name, please unmute yourself and just give a wave. Pardon me. If you have any familiarity with RJV at all, you will already know our phenomenal Executive Director, Jillian Lindquist, who's been the face of RJV for many years. Jillian will be presenting the case report later, which is always a big highlight of the AGM.
Hi everyone, so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Taryn Berger, you've already met. She is our Program and Volunteer Manager, and she will be delivering the volunteer report tonight. Taryn does so much behind the scenes to make sure everything runs smoothly and has been instrumental in helping us get set up with Zoom and all the other technical things in the background, and also took care of all the logistics for this meeting. And there's Taryn.
Hi everyone, as I'm busily typing away. Nice to see you all.
We also have 3 outstanding complex caseworkers. Dr. Jessica Rourke is an extremely talented colleague who has also served as acting executive director in Jillian's absence in the past. Her experience and extensive background in restorative justice has been invaluable to our work. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all. Thank you all for coming this evening.
Carol Larson has been with RJV for many years also, first as a stellar volunteer and now as a valued colleague. And I'd like to note that Carol was recently nominated for a provincial award for her wonderful work with RJV. Oh. And a special welcome to our newest addition to our complex caseworker team, Lane Foster. Lane has an impressive background in community mediation, conflict resolution, and transformative justice, and we are thrilled to have them on board. Hi, Lane.
Hi, folks. Lovely to see all of your smiling faces. I'm really excited to be with Restorative Justice Victoria.
Thanks, Lane. And I'd also like to give a quick shout out to some other folks. Tynan Browser for his expert advice on Zoom and support with a million other technical things. In there. I know he was locked up. Oh, there he is.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Next, we have Julie Cormier, whom we are very excited to welcome back to resume the Girls Circle project. We used to deliver it for many years and took a break, and Julie is going to tell us all about that a little bit later tonight.
Hi, everyone. So nice to see you all.
Thanks, Julie. And rounding out our little team here is Michelle Purchase, who is doing a practicum placement with us for several months as part of her social work program at UVic.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Super, thanks. So this is an unusual AGM in many ways, not only because it's virtual and pants are optional and we can't give you coffee and donuts, but normally we have our AGM in the spring. And so that usually reflects our work in the previous year, 2019. So the reports this year will mainly focus on the 2019 activities. But as we're well into 2020 now, we will have a few updates on how we've adapted in light of the pandemic. So in addition to not being able to have our AGM in person this year, we were all very disappointed that we had to cancel our 4th annual fall fundraiser. Last November, we hosted an event called Shoes, Brews, and Blues at Herman's Jazz Club, which featured an amazing footwear fashion show, great music, a silent auction, prizes, delicious food, and more. If any of you had a chance to attend, I know you'll agree with me that it was a great success and a whole lot of fun, which we hope to bring back next year. But this year, unfortunately, our fall fundraiser will have to be online. And although it won't be as much fun as a big party, we do hope that many of you will still be able to help support us by contributing or spreading the word when that comes up. So keep tuned for that. A full agenda was sent out earlier with the other documents, but just to do a quick recap of how our evening is going to go, we'll basically have 3 parts tonight. First, we'll have the staff reports that I mentioned. Then we'll deal with the society business, including approving the financial report and voting for the board. After that, we'll have a little break so everyone can stretch for a bit, and then we'll hear from our guest speaker, Dr. Lena Abramson. So before we get to the reports, we just have one quick little item of business to take care of, which is the approval of the minutes from last year's AGM, which were sent out earlier. So I hope everyone had a chance to give it a quick look. And if there are any amendments to those, could someone let us know now or put it in the chat? Okay, so hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes? Allison, did you want to be the first?
Yes.
Great, there we go. It is working. Okay, we've got Allison as our first. Could I have someone to second the motion, please? Penny? Fantastic. Penny Joy will be our seconder. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to try our first poll. So if you are a member, please vote to approve the minutes or not.
Okay, it looks like everyone's got them in. So I'll end the poll. Share. Okay, there you go. You should all be able to see the results.
Super. Okay, sorry, can I make that go away? All right, thank you, everyone. So we can move on to the report. So I'll turn it over to Jillian.
All right, everyone. I am about to launch into the 2019 case report, and I have a PowerPoint to assist with that. So I'm just going to pull that up here. Just bear with me for a second. Okay, so yeah, I'll be speaking to our casework in the year calendar year 2019, and then there's a couple little odds and ends that I added on to the end of that. As Aline mentioned, we're well into 2020, and there's a few things that I want to speak to about this year as well. And just so you know, I have been given 15 minutes, so I'm going to just burn through a bunch of stuff, especially things that are included in the annual report that was sent out to you. So if you're wanting to go back and sort of look at some of the stats and the casework and case information, there's most of that is in there. So I'm going to go through quickly a lot of the statistical information and really try and spend the bulk of my time on some of the more like client quotes and participant feedback, and just to try and give folks a sense of the feel of the work and what we're hearing from clients in terms of how this work is impacting their lives. So in terms of cases that were referred to us in 2019, there was a total of 80 cases, and those made up were in relation to 92 incidences of harms or offenses that occurred in the community. There were 78 responsible parties and 77 affected parties. And just a quick note about language. In our program, we use the term affected party to refer to victims or survivors, and responsible parties to refer to offenders or people who have committed harms. We do that because we work in the criminal justice system, but we also work outside of the criminal justice system and within the community. And we also want to avoid behaviors that might label or stigmatize people in our processes. So in terms of our referral sources, the vast majority of our referrals came from the police, 60%, then from Crown, around 22%. And we also got referrals from the community, probation, agencies and schools, and other RJ programs will sometimes refer us cases for various reasons. I just want to say quickly about the police referrals. I want to give a quick shout out to Chief Delmanic from Vic PD and Deputy Chief Jason Laidman, who are both here tonight. Thank you for coming. I also want to say that in 2019, something pretty fantastic happened with Vic PD. And that was that they created a reader within Prime, which is basically the police database, to allow myself to go in and look at files that fell into a certain category that might be referred to restorative justice. This is something that's pretty unusual. I'm not aware of other programs. I'm sure there are some, but who have been given this access. But what it does is it allows me to flag files that might be appropriate for restorative justice and reach out to the officer investigating that file and start a dialogue about this case and how our services might benefit the people involved. And it's been really instrumental in helping us to build relationships with police officers and make sure that we're able to reach into the community and identify cases that might be appropriate for restorative justice. I also actually I also want to acknowledge Judge Christine Lowe, who is with us here tonight, who was really instrumental in allowing restorative justice to be used within the courts, meaning that there can be instances in which an accused is sentenced, and part of that sentence can actually be a restorative justice process. And Judge Lowe was really the person who, at least from my perspective, she may feel differently, sort of spearheaded that, and it's been a really great addition to how we can use restorative justice in the community. So in terms of the types of cases that we were referred last year, there's a whole bunch of words on the screen. I'll just try and kind of summarize it a little bit. One of the things that I want to quickly point out is we've noticed a trend in our organization over the last about 4 years where when restorative justice was first in operation for the first, well, at least I've been with the organization for 10 years. And when I came on, the vast majority of the cases we were dealing with were property-related offenses that would be considered more minor. Now, I understand that just because a case is classified as a property offense doesn't mean that the impact can't be significant on the people involved in that matter. But the cases that we were referred would have been categorized probably in the criminal justice system as more minor cases. And over the years, we've really seen that shift where we're actually, the majority of our cases now are trending towards cases of more serious and oftentimes violent crime. And this year, 2019 certainly reflected that, and we're seeing that in 2020 even in an even more increased way. So in 2019, 31 of our cases, so just over 30%, involved theft 5,000 and under. And then from there, a lot of the cases we dealt with involved violence. So 21 assault. We dealt with a number of mischief and uttering threats. We were referred 4 cases of sexualized violence and 3 cases of intimate partner violence. We were referred various types of offense, including assault causing bodily harm, assault with a weapon, assaulting a police officer. We dealt with some break and enters, possession of stolen property, careless driving, and causing an animal to be in distress, and ultimately in that case resulted in that animal's death. Extortion, robbery, forceful confinement, and a number of other things, including a traffic fatality. So I think this represents just the really vast array of cases that our organization is dealing with now. Many different types of harms, many different forms of harms in the community, and we've really had to adapt and develop more resources for our program to be able to respond to these cases in a good way. And as I said, so the cases that come into our program, we've developed a way to sort of identify whether they're cases that we would call particularly complex, and that usually involves circumstances around the relationship between the affected party and the responsible party, some things around their wellness, and the severity of the offense. And over 50% of the cases we had last year, we categorized into that category, and 46% of them involve violence. So here's a little bit about the demographics of our clients. As it relates to affected parties and responsible parties, a large portion of them fall into that 26 to 64 year age category. We do obviously work with youth, affected and responsible parties. And so this graph represents some of those demographics. In terms of where our clients reside, all over the CRD, with a majority of them coming from Victoria, Esquimalt, and Saanich. So I just want to take a quick minute to look at case outcomes. And so in terms of the cases that we were referred, the 80 cases that we were referred, the cases that proceeded, there were 48 cases that proceeded. So what I mean by that is they moved forward to a formal restorative justice process. So of the cases that proceeded, 5 of them are still in progress. 7 of them resulted in an informal resolution or healing process, meaning there was no formal agreement that came out of the process. And then 36 of them, it resulted in an agreement between the responsible party and the people impacted by their actions. And in all 36 of those cases, the responsible party fully completed their commitments that they made typically in the dialogue. And we didn't have any instances in our 2019 cases where a responsible party did not complete their agreement. Of the cases that did not proceed, 32 cases didn't proceed, and I just want to quickly touch on that. I think there can sometimes be a perception that if a case doesn't proceed, we didn't do much, which is not the case. And I just wanted to quickly describe that. So when a case is referred to restorative justice, we quickly engage with the responsible party and the affected party. There are some instances in which we're unable to reach clients, and in those cases we do have to return quickly. But oftentimes that process is one where we are speaking, connecting, and working with these clients. Even if the case doesn't move forward, we're supporting them. We're validating their experiences. We're helping them access resources. So we're really working alongside of them, and it can be for quite a period of time, even if the case doesn't move forward. So for example, we were referred a case in 2019. It was in relation to a traffic fatality. It was referred to us by Victim Services, and the family had an interest in meeting with the driver. And so I worked with that family for quite some time to help them understand what restorative justice might have to offer, where it might not meet their needs, and how it might fit in the context of the criminal justice system. Then from there, I helped the family coordinate meetings with Victim Services and Crown Counsel to express their wishes around restorative justice in a clear and concise way, so that the Crown could then share those wishes with the driver. Unfortunately, in that case, the driver chose not to participate, but I was able to work with and support that family throughout that process. So that's just an example of, I have a colleague, Ellen Edwards, who uses the term service beyond the process. Sometimes the process doesn't happen, but in the community, we're still really able to support people who've been involved in harmful events to access other resources and understand what might be available to them in the community. So in terms of cases that did not proceed, that were referred to us, there were 32. In 11 of them, we were unable to contact the responsible party. In 9 of those cases, that we call it other, so these are just unique circumstances. I won't go into those here. In 5, the responsible party didn't consent to the process, so once they understood what it entailed and were better informed, they decided they declined. In 4 instances, the participants really disputed the facts of the case and felt that that would just create more tension and didn't want to move into the restorative justice process under those circumstances. In 2 cases, the affected party didn't consent when they understood the process further and were offered the option to participate. And in 1 case, the responsible party wanted to participate but did not have the capacity at that time. So I just wanted to quickly touch on agreements. So as I mentioned earlier, a common outcome of our processes, not in every case, but a common outcome is that the people involved so the person who committed the harm and people in the community who were impacted will often come to some agreement around how to move forward from those events. And what we noticed in every agreement is really catered to the people involved and their needs and circumstances. In 2019, some of the common agreement outcomes that we saw were financial restitution to victims, folks attending counseling, conducting volunteer work in the community, letters of apology and other forms of gift giving and apology making, addiction support, rehabilitation programs and supports around substance use, researching and discussing impacts of specific types of harms, creating plans for budgeting, communication, boundaries and self-care, courses on violence prevention, nonviolent communication, anger management, self-reflective writing, and prioritizing mental health, physical wellness, and support systems in their lives. So I just want to give a couple of quick examples. So we were working on a case where somebody had assaulted a colleague, and one of the agreement outcomes of that was a 6-week anger management, violence prevention, and communication course. Another client that we worked with had committed an assault while experiencing an acute mental health crisis and had committed to doing a stop and check before they leave the house to ensure they've taken their medication. Someone who was dealing with substance use issues committed an assault at a local bar, and as a result of that, she put herself on a bar watch program, so she was unable to enter bars for 2 years, with the goal of ensuring she's less likely to relapse, but also giving the victim, the affected party, a sense of safety in the bars, that she wouldn't run into that person again. A person who committed an assault with a weapon and caused a concussion on the affected party did 40 hours of volunteer work directly with brain injured folks to understand just how terribly that event could have gone. A youth who sexually extorted another youth online engaged in a letter writing process as requested by the affected party to hear her needs and answer her questions. And finally, a person who caused the accidental death of her pet did volunteer work with the Hoarding Education Action Team at the request of an SPCA worker, as hoarding, it negatively impacts animals. So I think that might just give you a bit of a flavor of some of the really unique and catered agreement options that we're able to create in the restorative justice process. Okay, so just a little bit about some of the client feedback. We do a lot of program evaluation at Restorative Justice Victoria. We do evaluation at various points in the process. Program evaluation is really important to us and something that we think is really important to the field of restorative justice, just generally. So I just created a quick snapshot of some of the feedback. I couldn't go into all of it obviously here, but here are some stats. So for affected parties, 100% would recommend restorative justice to someone else who participated in restorative justice in 2019. 100% said they felt safe during the dialogue with their offender. And 88% agreed that the responsible party was held accountable for their actions. And we ask our clients at the, how satisfied are you with your experience with RJV? And then we, put that out to see what the general consensus is. And for affected parties in 2019, we received a 93% satisfaction rate with their experience. So I'm just going to read, I have way too many quotes on here. I should not have put this many quotes on here, but I had a really hard time picking some because I thought they all spoke to different things. I'm going to just read some of these here. So these are quotes from affected parties who've gone through restorative justice with us last year. I appreciated the support of being taken seriously, that if the offender was shown how serious their actions were. I was extremely grateful for the dedication and time given to this case at the expense of volunteers while being treated with respect, dignity, and without judgment. The people involved were incredible. I would like to acknowledge the volunteers for the dedication and commitment in helping others find peaceful resolves in these highly unfortunate matters, demonstrating immense sincerity to their commitment with utmost professionalism, support, and understanding. I greatly admire, respect, and appreciate all of their contributions, which has in turn restored a little more faith in me towards society. I am happy that it got done in a good way. Smiley face. All the facilitators were very helpful and supportive throughout the dialogue. I appreciated being part of helping someone, not just punishing them. So in terms of client feedback as it relates to responsible parties, again, just a couple of quick snapshots. So 100% said that they would recommend restorative justice to someone else. 100% felt that it helped them address the factors that contributed to the offense, and 100% agreed that they were treated fairly. In relation to their general satisfaction, they gave a 98% rating. So again, some quotes. They did not make me feel like a criminal. The dialogue allows for closure, along with putting everything together and showing that the community is there to help. My participation allowed me to heal to an extent that I did not know was possible. I was held accountable. I was able to look at myself and know that I am more than my actions. This organization heals. It doesn't just slap a charge on you and send you on your way. It helps the responsible party learn and pushes them to change. Keep doing what you're doing, making the world a better place one case file at a time. I appreciated and loved having a mentor who did not judge, but rather had the best possible intentions for me to succeed in this process. I feel less shame. It's been an amazing experience. It has put a drive in me to live a healthier life. And I thought this one was so funny, so I decided to add it. Good work. It's no wonder RJ has a 100% completion rate. I don't know where they got that stat from, but I thought it was funny. Okay, so I just want to talk quickly about some projects. We were involved with a number of really awesome and exciting projects in 2019. One was called Evaluating Restorative Responses, which is trying to put together some evaluation tools for restorative justice in BC, which we need to improve our services, but also have a data set. We launched a victim and survivor-centered website on restorative justice. We were able to get a 3-year funding project to do on-the-job casework, on-the-job training with our volunteers through our complex caseworkers. We were a part of a national research project with the Department of Justice Canada. We were on 5 research sites on the use of restorative justice with offenders who have FASD or other cognitive disabilities. And we were also part of another national research project through the Department of Justice Canada called the Listening Project, in which victims who've gone through restorative justice were asked to give their insight and thoughts on their experience, but also how to improve restorative justice in Canada. And I want to quickly, obviously, thank our funders. We could not do this work without you, that's obvious. City of Victoria and Township of Esquimalt. We get funding from Government of BC through a number of sources, the Government of Canada. The Victoria Foundation has been a really long-standing funder of ours, and a number of their funds contribute to Restorative Justice Victoria. And then there's a number of organizations and businesses in the community that contribute to our work, and we're incredibly grateful for that support. So Aline asked me to do a quick update on our organization and COVID-19, just in terms of if there are questions, are we still operational? What are we doing? How are we making it work? We are still operational and taking on new cases and processing our current cases. The beginning was a real, as was for many people, scramble to try and figure out what to do, how to do this work safely, what is safe. There was so much confusion at the beginning, even just in regards to the virus and how to, what guidelines would help keep the public safe. Taryn was absolutely stellar in being our researcher and putting together policies and practices around how to do restorative justice in the face of COVID-19. Over the summer, just out of an abundance of caution, we ended up doing a lot of work outdoors. So we had a lot of client meetings and a lot of dialogues outside, which was very interesting. Who knew you could go to a local park and set up some folding chairs and just make a go of it? I know some of those were great and some of them were challenging. Carol got a massive sunburn a few times. And yeah, it's been a really interesting journey as we move into the fall and winter, knowing that the weather is going to change. We're knowing we have to shift again. We were able to get funding to hire Lane, and we're very excited to work with them as our work's gotten more complex, and we were able to get funding to rent some larger spaces for with good ventilation for instances when we do some work together in person, but the reality is a lot of our work will be happening online, so we're developing our organizational capacities and competencies in those areas. So we're carrying on, and we know that the folks in the RJ community throughout BC and Canada are all really working to make a go of this and serve our clients in this environment. So we're grateful I'm grateful for our team and grateful for our colleagues as we continue to work through this together. All right, I know I've already gone past my to stop. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to our work, about our work in 2019. As I mentioned, a lot of this information is in our annual report. So if you want to know more, please go there. Or if you ever want to reach out to me about anything, I would always love to hear from any of you.
Thanks, Jillian. So I'm going to jump into my volunteer report. So I'll share my screen as well. Okay. So, I'm focusing on 2019. This does seem like a long time ago from now, but and we have done a lot since then, but you will just have to come to our next AGM to hear about 2020. So for 2019, we had 68 volunteers filling 126 positions. So many of our volunteers fill multiple roles. Some of our administrative volunteers are also scribes, and some of our caseworkers are also community members. So people play various roles in our organization, and we're really amazed at how they can shift really quickly into different positions as needed. So we have several different types of volunteers. We have 29 facilitators and mentors, 41 community members, 19 scribes, 11 board members, 7 administrative volunteers, 18 event volunteers at our last fundraiser, and 1 practicum student in 2019. We did some volunteer training in 2019. We did the first of our advanced caseworker training, which is very exciting. I'll talk to you about that in a second. And then we also did some scribe training and some individual community member training, both for 3 hours total each. In 2019, we brought on several new volunteers. So we had 1 practicum student, 3 new community members, 4 scribes, 2 administrative volunteers, and 10 caseworkers. Our caseworkers started their application in 2019, and then they did their training in the new year in 2020. So our advanced caseworker training, we delivered the first of the 6 that we're going to be offering over 3 years thanks to our Complex Caseworker Project Grant. So this training, The Art of the Restorative Justice Dialogue, was developed by our complex caseworkers, Carol and Jess, and it was a workshop and role play session on further developing skills in managing complex dynamics during a dialogue. So that was November of last year, and we're also going to be putting it on again this year. We had 2 different volunteer appreciation events. So one was a summer picnic, which was last July, and then we also had pumpkin carving for the Halloween. Usually we do our end of year volunteer celebration in December, but last year we decided to move it to February so more people could make it. But I did want to highlight that our Hallie Award, which is presented at this volunteer appreciation event. So the Hallie Award, as some of you may know already, Hallie Davies began volunteering with Restorative Justice Victoria in late 2013. Towards the end of her training, Hallie was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and despite fighting it as best she could, she passed away in March 2015. We created this award to remember and honor Hallie's tenacious spirit and recognize outstanding contributions to the restorative justice community. So nominations are open for any individual who has worked or volunteered with Restorative Justice Victoria in the last 2 years, goes above and beyond the call of duty, acknowledges their strengths, challenges, and areas of development, and connects with equal enthusiasm and fervor with both colleagues and clients. So this year, in 2019, the award went to Nikki Hadwell. So Nikki has been with us since 2017. She volunteers as a caseworker, and since 2019 has also done some work with us on training and new caseworker coaching. So we're so grateful to have Nikki on board, and we're very glad to have been able to give her this award. Okay, so as the slide says, we truly couldn't be able to do all that we accomplished without our volunteers. I know we always want to celebrate their efforts, but I do want to give a special shout out to their creativity, flexibility, and willingness to learn in the past 6 months as we have moved into all sorts of new ways of doing our work. They constantly demonstrate their dedication to providing safe and effective restorative justice services, and it's always a pleasure, especially for myself, and I know for the other staff as well, to get to work with each of them. So thanks everyone, and it's so nice to see all our volunteers that came by today. Okay. So
I think it's my turn now.
That's right.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm not going to be sharing my screen. As I was introduced, my name is Julie Cormier, and I've been with Restorative Justice for 7 years now. And I have dedicated my career to the nonprofit sector, specifically in areas of nonviolence and peace, as well as women's services and youth programs. And so I have been a facilitator of girls' circles for the past 7 years as well. And so I'm here today to say the good news that in 2020 and 2021, thanks to funding from Island Savings Endowment Fund, as well as the Rachel Davies Fund, up to 24 girls, self-identified girls, non-binary and gender diverse youth will have the opportunity to participate in this amazing program called the Girls Circle Community Project. And so as the lead facilitator, I'm here to tell you about the program and as well as how it aligns with restorative justice processes and principles, and also offer an update as to where we are at with the program. So first of all, why I'm dedicated to Girls Circle programs. Well, as a cis woman, I really do wish selfishly that there were opportunities when I was younger and younger adolescents to really understand what it means to be a girl in a westernized society that values patriarchy, capitalism, colonization, and white supremacy. And not only gaining awareness of that social positioning, but also realizing that there are possibilities of doing something about it. Another reason I'm dedicated to this work is really trying to make a difference in the epidemic proportion of violence against women. In Canada, 1 in 3 women and girls are impacted by violence and abuse since the age of 16. And so that is something that is telling me that alternatives need to come and be available and be accessible in order to create change, especially in that area. As a caseworker, I've worked with a lot of young women and young mothers, and although they come to RJ through non-serious offenses, the majority of the times they have been impacted by serious violent and abuse situations. And so it's just a reminder that that we need to have alternatives, and restorative justice is a way to do that. So let me tell you about the program. It's a violence prevention program for girls, self-identified girls, non-binary and gender diverse youth between the ages of 9 and 18 who may have experienced violence and or are experiencing low mental health, such as anxiety, stress, or depression. So this is really to offer a safe, supportive environment once a week for up to 12 weeks, where we radically center around the needs, the lived realities, and the intersections of girls through discussion and activities to then collectively address these barriers, the challenges, especially the gender norms that are harmful to their development. And this is done through social emotional learning as well as critical education. I love this program. It was developed in San Francisco, and so it's an evidence-based program. And the ultimate goal is really to equip girls with the protective factors, including power within, to face these societal barriers that are violent, that are sexist and oppressive. And so week after week, girls come together in a supportive environment and are supported to exercise their voice without fear, without doubt, and without censorship, and to lead the questions around the issues that are impacting them directly, especially violence, in order to understand that violence is a societal problem, not a personal problem. So this is really an opportunity for healing, for learning, and empowerment. Girls who finish the program identify a greater sense of confidence and connectedness, as well as developing skills in communication and critical thinking, and also growing their resilience. And in the end, they're not facing violence alone. And that's the biggest impact that I want to give back. In terms of how it aligns with restorative justice, first of all, it centers around relationships as the key to healing, to learning, and to empowerment. So really looking at the sisterhood as a source of support. It's also trauma-informed and strength-based. So the facilitation uses motivational interviewing techniques, as well as nonviolent communication. And lastly, it really values and sees the importance of cultural relevancy. So in this situation, we're really looking at gender, but also its intersections and the lived realities of the individuals who are in the group. So it's really about understanding the full context and history, which is what restorative justice aims to do in all cases. So I'm sure I'm past my 5 minutes, so I'm just going to do a quick update. So due to COVID, we are going to be doing a blended approach of online and a small portion of in-person gatherings to deliver the program. We started the program about a month ago, and we've been doing outreach mostly with school counselors, community centers, and libraries, as well as nonprofit-based youth services. And so we hope to actually start the group in November. So if anyone is interested in talking about Girl Circle, empowerment, or you're connected with one of these agencies or know someone who might benefit, feel free to email me. I'm at julie@rjvictoria.com. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi, everyone. So I think it's my turn to go now. My name is Devin Arnold. I'm the treasurer for Restorative Justice Victoria, and I've been with the organization since 2011. So just about to head into my 11th year or 10th year with the organization. I also have two small kids who just got out of the bath, and I'm Zooming from my daughter's bedroom. So I apologize in advance. There's probably a 50-50 chance that I'm going to get interrupted in a couple of minutes here. So I'm just going to follow the trend and share my screen here for a couple of slides. If anybody's been to one of the AGMs before where I presented, you will be familiar with my puppy slides. So by this point, we've heard from a lot of talking heads. So if you're not that interested in the financial side of the information, or that tends to kind of zone you out, I put in some cute pictures of puppies to go along with the financials. Okay. So just a couple of highlights from last year. I think Jillian's talked to a number of these already. We received an increase in funding from our BC Community Gaming Grant to cover ongoing staffing costs, as well as funds from civil forfeiture and other sources to support complex case management. As Jillian said, the nature of our cases has become much more complex over the years, and we've been very grateful to our funders for the additional money to help support hiring of complex case managers and the ongoing complex case management training. As Jillian also mentioned, we received funding to revamp the new Restorative Justice Victoria website as well. So just a quick rundown of our funding and revenue sources. As you'll see on the chart in the table and in the financial statements that went out, we received most of the funds that we expected to receive from the year. And our total operating budget for the year was just over $205,000. In terms of how our funding breaks down, 49%, just under 50% of our budget comes from core funding, which is never a sure thing, but has been relatively stable over the past 5 years or so. 40% comes from project and one-time funding, and then 11% comes from our fundraising initiatives and training and service revenue that we earn throughout the year. As far as how those expenses break down, the significant majority, around 86%, goes to staffing and wage costs for, again, our permanent in-house staff, our complex case managers, and facilitators and trainers that we hire throughout the year. The remaining funds go about, and I think, sorry, I'll just switch ahead here, 9% to our office expenses, and then 5% covers off the rest of our expenses for the year. So again, the vast majority of our funds go towards maintaining our staff costs. In terms of our overall financial position at the end of 2019, we ended just under budget with a little bit of a surplus. This leaves us in a good financial position. Our contingency fund has stayed pretty stable over the last couple of years at about $30,000. We're not expecting any shortfalls, obviously, at the moment, but we're in a good position to continue operations. Normally, as Aline mentioned, we do this update usually in April, so it's usually looking ahead to 2020. In this case, it's looking back a little bit now. We've seen an increase in our base funding from the BC government through the Community Accountability Program from $5,000 to $8,000. We were fortunate again to secure additional funding from civil forfeiture to continue complex case management hours. And we were also received funding through the Victoria Foundation and their Emergency Community Support Fund, which provides supplies and services during COVID-19. So this allowed us to increase our complex case manager hours and bring Lane on board to help out with our case management. Looking ahead to 2020, again, now even though we're halfway through, we're actually in quite a good financial position for this year. Again, we've received all the funding that we had budgeted for, received the emergency community support funding, and again, are in a good position, seeing about a 10 to 15% increase in revenue over last year, which again is going, as always, to staffing and wage costs. So again, the 2020 budget sees about 86% of our budget going to salaries. So I know we're running behind, so I kept it short and sweet. So again, I'll just join everybody else in saying thank you to our funders and to the volunteers, individual donors, and members of the community that support the organization. And just as a last piece, I'll call for a motion to approve the financials and budget as presented, if somebody is willing to affirm.
I will affirm. Justin Douglas.
Thanks, Justin. And a second?
I'll second. Joanne Yeomans.
Joanne. And Taryn, I don't know if you're going to do a poll here. Okay, I'll let you take over there.
Okay, the results are shared and passed.
Great. Okay, I think it's back to me. Just before we move on to board nominations, Joanne let me know that we have a little bit of a difficulty with our very first poll, approving last year's minutes, because Allison, you were the first person, but you were not at the meeting, so you can't actually affirm the motion. So if I could have a substitute for Allison to affirm the minutes, someone who was at the meeting last year, could you please say your name?
Sure, I'll affirm.
Thanks, Devin. Grand. Okay, and also again, before moving on to the nominations, I've got a few more things I wanted to say. We do have some former board members with us tonight. I would like to acknowledge Penny Joy. Can you wave to everybody, Penny? Yay! Penny is one of our founding members and was the first chair of the board and served for several years. It's all started at Penny Joy's kitchen table many years ago, and it's fair to say we wouldn't be here tonight celebrating all this great work without her vision and initiative. So we owe Penny a great debt. Also, Jillian also introduced us to Christine Lowe, her honor, Judge Christine Lowe of the Provincial Court, who served on our board before being called to the bench. And as Jillian mentioned, she was instrumental in developing RJ's relationship with the Crown Counsel Office. So thank you to both of you for your past contributions to the board and for your continued unwavering support of Restorative Justice Victoria. Also, I'd like to send a thanks to our outgoing board members who are not running again this year due to other commitments. Thank you very much to Rick Anthony, Jacqueline Belkins, Ewan Thompson, and Todd Wellman. We are going to miss you. But we do still have a great slate of volunteers who are running for the board this year, some of whom have been on the board for several years, and others who have joined more recently. Most of them are here tonight, so I will call upon them in turn to introduce themselves. And for those who aren't able to join us, I'll just read a short bio about them. I'll start with the board executive and the positions of chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. I'm putting my name forward again to remain as your chair. I have a legal background, and currently I am the legal officer at the Office of the Conflict of Interest Commissioner for British Columbia. Prior to that, I worked as an ombudsperson officer and worked in private practice. I've been with the organization since 2005 and have been the chair since 2010. So also been here for about 10 years. I love this organization, I love the people in it, I love our work, and I would be really honored to remain as your chair. The position of vice chair, Allison Payne. Can you say hello?
Hello. I'm Allison Payne. My background is in journalism, communications, human resources and conflict resolution. I am a mediator and conflict consultant with the Conflict Management Office within the government of British Columbia. So it's a workplace conflict resolution office, which I was able to set up when I was the Assistant Deputy Minister of Talent Management for the government of British Columbia. So it was just a gap that needed to be filled within government, and happily I was able to do that, and now I'm a mediator with that office. So I, like Elaine and like Mayor Helps, think that the work that this group does is extraordinary, that it contributes to the community in remarkable ways, that I've watched it grow from, as Jillian said, an organization that dealt primarily with small theft to one that actually diverts some fairly serious crimes out of the criminal justice system and into the restorative justice system where they rightly belong. So I am hugely supportive of the work that this group does, and I recognize that among restorative justice organizations, this one is a leader. So I would very much like to continue as a board member for Restorative Justice Victoria.
Thank you, Allison. And Devin, you've already heard from him as our treasurer, and he is thankfully running again. Let's hear from Devin for a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I won't spend too long. As I mentioned earlier, I've been with the Board of Restorative Justice Victoria since 2011, and operating as the treasurer for that entire time. And yeah, as Elaine mentioned, honored to put my name forward again for this year as well. I work as a systems administrator and data analyst at the University of Victoria, and despite my presentations, I'm an avid cat person. I actually don't like dogs that much, but they make for good presentation material.
Thanks, Devin. I think we need cats next year. Kittens are cute.
Yeah, after 10 years, maybe it's time to switch it up. Yeah.
Position of secretary is Joanne Humans.
Hello, everyone. I think you have my bio there. I'm the odd man out here. I retired, so I can't bore you with all of my interests. I've been with the board since 2013, and I'm also a facilitator since 2011 with RJV. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Two nominees are not able to attend this evening, so I'll introduce them to you. April Langedin is an accredited financial planning specialist with a large private wealth management firm and has nearly 2 decades of varied experience in the financial services industry. She has a Bachelor of Commerce in Entrepreneurial Management and a Master of Arts in Leadership from Railroads University. April also holds other financial planning diplomas and designations, and she joined the board in 2019. Dawn Thiessen has been on the board since 2017. She has over 20 years experience working with children, youth, and families with clinical and residential treatment centers, healthcare settings, and a variety of multidisciplinary teams. For the past 10 years, she's worked as a mental health therapist and currently works for VIHA. Over to Justin Douglas, who is another member for at large.
Thank you. I think I'm the newest sitting board member right now, so I would like to be re-elected. Just to give you a background, if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you before, I have a degree in political science from the University of Victoria. I then went to McGill Law and double majored in common law and civil law. I articled in immigration and refugee law in Toronto, and then stepped back from the legal world in order to pursue my passion of acting. And I would now say I'm a working actor in Victoria, but I definitely wanted to stay connected to the legal community and in terms of alternative justice, and I felt that restorative justice was the best way to do that. And I'm really thrilled to continue to be involved in the work of the organization. So thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Next, Naomi Gitterman.
Hi everyone, I'm Naomi. I've been on the board since 2016. I graduated from UVic with Child and Youth Care degree. And I've been a part of Restorative Justice fundraising committee. We did Restore Your Soul, and last year's Shoes, Brews, and Blues was very successful. So I'm happy to be a part of RJ and would love to be reelected.
Thank you, Naomi. And our last director at large is Melanie Wagner-Collins.
Thanks, Celine. My name is Melanie Wagner-Collins. I am a registered psychiatric nurse, and I've been working in a variety of settings in mental health for the last 25 years. I'm currently working as a casual nurse for an ACT team and the IMCERT, Integrated Mobile Crisis Response Team, which we partner with the Victoria and Saanich Police and deal with mental health problems in the community. And I've really enjoyed my last 3 years. And I'm sorry we don't get to do any event planning this year, but I'd like to continue on with RJ and hope for the best for next year for our event.
Great, thanks everybody. So that's our slate of nominees for the board this year. Could I have a motion to approve the slate of candidates as presented?
I'll move Kat Bellamano.
Thank you. And could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second. It's Shanna.
Oh, hi, Shanna. Thank you.
Hi.
Okay, and we'll get Taryn to put up her handy dandy poll.
Okay. We'll end it and share. So that's
Super.
passed as well.
Wonderful. Super. Well, thank you so much. We look forward to working for this organization for the next year. And I'd like to thank my board colleagues for the past hard work over the last year and your friendship. It's been a bit of a challenge adapting to all of our online work. And I appreciate everyone still staying engaged and working hard through all of this. And more fun is yet to come. And again, hopefully next year we can continue our good work. So this completes the business portion of the AGM. We're going to take a short break of about 5 minutes so we can stretch, and we'll come back and welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Alana Abramson. Thanks everyone. See you in a few minutes.
So we'll get started in about 30 seconds here. In about 30 seconds or so, I will be really honored and grateful to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Alana Abramson. All right, well, I'm going to introduce our wonderful guest speaker for tonight. I'm really thrilled to have Dr. Abramson with us tonight, also known to me as Alana. Alana is a dear friend and colleague of mine. I've known Alana for probably close to 10 years now. I knew her first as a practitioner and executive director of a local restorative justice program, which she led with excellence, I will say, and was able to, in the early days, at least it was for me anyways, develop a really stellar, highly respected restorative justice program. Through the midst of all of that, Alana went on to complete her PhD and is somebody who is highly respected in the restorative justice community here in BC and beyond. And so I'm really, really delighted to have Alana here with us tonight. I just want to read a quick bio, and Alana will tell you more, I'm sure. Alana has worked as a researcher, practitioner, and trainer with respect to restorative justice since 1999. Alana has organized and hosted numerous conferences and community learning events with respect to first responders, mental health, trauma, and prison justice. In 2017, Alana was the recipient of the Restorative Justice Award from the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General. Alana is currently a full-time criminology instructor at Kwantlen Polytechnic University, coordinator and facilitator for the Alternatives to Violence Project, member of the Interior Restorative Justice Hub, board member of the BC Bereavement Society and the Restorative Justice Association BC, and trainer with the Chief Crisis and Trauma Resource Institute. She's busy, and we are together. We are both on the board for Restorative Justice Association of BC, and I can also say that working with Alana in that regard is such a joy, and she's really just done so much to move that association forward. So I know we're a little bit behind. I do hope that folks can stay a bit later to hear all of Alana's presentation and get the opportunity to ask some questions. If you're not able to, please just feel free to leave the meeting. And I'm going to pass it over to Alana.
Thank you so much, Jillian. I was really honored to be asked to speak. I have tremendous respect for the work of RJV and definitely uphold this program as definitely a guiding light in this province. So really the only thing that was missing is I'm a cat lover. So, you know, some people have kids running in and out in their background. I've just got a bunch of cats, so you might see them hopping on and hopping off. It is really too bad that we couldn't be together in person, but it is wonderful to see such a well-attended AGM. As a former executive director myself, you kind of bite your nails on that night and hope people show and hope people stay for what you've prepared after the business is over. So thank you to all of you, over 40 I can see, that stuck around to hear about this research project. So I am going to sort of keep it brief, and yeah, if we want to stick around for some questions, that's fine. I'm also very available to have conversations offline. There's some of you I know quite well on this in this meeting, and some I've just met. So I am an open book, and I'm happy to share the publication of the research results for you. There's like a long version and a short version, so I can share both, and you can take a look at the executive summary. So tonight I am zooming in from the unceded traditional territory of the Lekwungen people, also known as Kamloops. I've been a guest in this territory for the past 7 years. Before that, I am from the Lower Mainland, where I worked with North Shore Restorative Justice for 10 years. And so much of my work now is doing training. I'm currently involved in one of the largest restorative justice initiatives in North America, maybe the world. We're at the end of it, and we're not sure. And that involves setting up restorative justice for survivors of sexualized violence from the Canadian military. So I've been working with the Department of National Defense on that project, along with other research projects that are dear to my heart. I'm on a 1-year sabbatical now to focus on those things and doing some writing. So I actually feel a little bit grateful that I'm not back in the virtual classroom as an educator, because I think it would be quite a struggle. I didn't get involved in teaching to sit at my desk. I really believe deeply in being together in the same space. And so my heart goes out to colleagues and friends that are mourning that, and I certainly feel it too, especially nights like this. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and prepared a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation here. The title of this research is Educating for Change, Honoring the Voices of Restorative Justice Participants. And this was made possible by a grant from the Ministry's office. And it was supported, and ethics approval was granted through my home university, Kwantlen Polytechnic University. And so I'm really grateful to the ministry for funding this research. They're funding another action research project I'm involved in right now, which has to do with building relationships between Indigenous justice programs and restorative justice. So maybe I'll be around in a couple of years back with you to share about that project. And so basically, the motivation for this project was recognizing that in all of our communities in British Columbia, most cases do not see the light of day in a restorative justice setting. Most cases are still going through the system in the way that they always have. And so my hope was that by providing research to our government, provincial government, about the benefits of restorative justice, if they haven't been listening, what's actually going on in our province is really amazing and positive, and they should listen and they should support us more. And so again, lots of literature showing that restorative justice is still unfortunately on the margins of the system. That's nothing to take away from the incredible work done by programs like RJV that were highlighted tonight in the reports. But many people do not have access to this, and there's lots of reasons for that I won't get into, but really the motivation was to provide even more empirical evidence that this is a meaningful response to people, as well as trying to help inform programs that wanted to get more involved in complex cases, serious cases. Many of the programs in our province only deal with very minor crimes, and I have a real, and I think we all should have a real vested interest in making sure that if we're expanding our services to include more complex cases, more serious cases, that those are done well, they're done ethically, and they're done from a trauma-informed perspective. And so these are the research questions that guided the study. I wanted to ask about how victims and offenders sort of experience restorative justice. This project was a storytelling project in many ways. We wanted participants to share their story. And we did focus on victims and offenders that had been participating in restorative justice following a serious, complex, and or violent crime. And so this is how we operationalize serious and complex cases. So things like if the presence of multiple victims and offenders, power-based crimes, sexualized violence. So those are the crimes that we focused on. And we exclusively interviewed participants that were involved in those kinds of cases. We also interviewed restorative justice facilitators, and were interested to see what they thought were some promising practices in the field when dealing with serious and complex cases. We originally said best practices, and we changed it to promising practices because I think the moment that you think you're doing the best work, there's always something to be learning. So that's why we changed that language. And we wanted to know how to improve the quality of both the process and the outcome of restorative justice for all. So this really had to do with also refocusing restorative justice on victim needs. I don't have to remind RJV folks because I think RJV is one of the most victim survivor centered programs that I've worked with for sure. But just revisiting that foundational literature, we know that restorative justice philosophy is about centralizing victim needs. And so we really wanted to hear that, and that is why we focused on sort of serious and complex cases where victims were involved, not just looking at cases involving property crimes from, say, major retailers and things like that. We really wanted to hear about the intimate experiences of victims, survivors, and offenders. And again, as I said, we hoped that this would help the field, this would help the government, and this would help other justice stakeholders in recognizing what good quality restorative justice might look like and what participants have to say. As I mentioned, the methods that we use were through a storytelling process. My research assistants were trained in trauma-informed interviewing and really adopted a walking beside kind of model of interviewing. Very open, very compassionate listening, rather than a structured kind of, we're going to ask these questions and we're going to ask them in this order. And in fact, just as an aside, I have to say that I had a couple of participants from the research contact me and say how supported they felt after the interviews with the RAs. So that was a real highlight, that through telling their stories, they felt empowered, they felt cared about, and obviously that was so important to us in this research endeavor. So at the end of the study, we had 52 participants in total, 13 victims, 10 offenders. You can see the numbers there. The kinds of offenses were 10 of them we considered complex. So substance use issues, multiple victims, situations in families. We looked at cases of murder, loss of life, assault causing bodily harm, and sexual assault. And so the data, what I would like to present you tonight is some of the highlights. Again, qualitative study, so I did include some quotes, but one of the things that I thought was really interesting that you might want to know about as a restorative justice organization is that the majority of the participants learned about restorative justice from friends. And I thought that that was a very, very interesting finding, that it wasn't justice professionals, police, Crown, anyone like that that was informing most of the participants. It was friends or peers from the victim community. And so I think with that data, we might think about, and I know I thought a lot about this as an executive director, how do we engage community? How do we enhance community awareness? Because this is actually where potential participants are getting a lot of their information from. That's not to say we can't focus on educating justice stakeholders, but I know that felt like a bit of a challenge when, Crown is changing often and police officers might be moving around and so on. So I think community education is important, as well as justice stakeholder education. Others learned about restorative justice from police officers, victim services. Many of the facilitators learned about restorative justice from studying criminology. That's how I came to this work, as many of you did. And then there was some sort of outliers. One victim found out about restorative justice from an institutional parole officer, and so on. And so we then went on to ask victim survivors and offenders about their justice needs. What did they need? Not about restorative justice necessarily, but what, this has happened to them, what do they need? This is very consistent with the literature, particularly around survivor research, is they wanted answers to questions, understanding about what happened and why. Safety. Many survivors wanted the opportunity to assist the offender to rehabilitate, to change their life. For offenders, we saw themes around accountability, responsibility, and victims wanted that too. Many of our participants wanted access to other sources, resources, and sources of support. And another strong theme was to share my story. So you can see the quote there by Larissa around looking at wanting to feel safe, wanting to be able to express how she felt after her victimization, and also being able to not be sort of forced through a process, but really be driving the process herself. We asked participants directly what they thought about the restorative justice facilitators that they worked with, and wow, these facilitators got really high marks. Every participant felt they had a choice to participate, and that is so important in a restorative justice process. They felt that they had provided consent. They felt cared about. They felt high level of trust. They felt well prepared. And some of those adjectives there about how facilitators are described as supportive and respectful and reliable. So those are things I think as a trainer myself, that is what we hope for, is that facilitators are described in this way. Noreen says, I think the amount of time, care, and attention in the process was remarkable. The facilitators let the process be what I wanted it to be, but they didn't make assumptions about what I wanted out of it. I felt very much like I was in the driver's seat as far as creating my own experience, and that felt great. What participants appreciated about the RJ process itself, outside of the facilitators, was to humanize. This was a very, very strong theme. The opportunity to build relationship. Many of the participants we spoke to actually had ongoing relationships after the restorative justice process. They had ongoing communication after, which again, when we're thinking about complex and serious harm, can be very surprising results, but that's what we found. A deeper understanding of the harm was reported. They appreciated sharing their story, having questions answered, and having a safe place to do that. This is one of the highlights, I think, for me, just wondering how, if at all, restorative justice has impacted their life outside of the process, right? And so I've got some quotes here. Cade said, I haven't been arrested since. I got 4 kids, a beautiful wife. I have a home. I have 2 vehicles, a good job. RJ helped me find myself, to really think about, because when I was out in isolation, I felt like a little boy, even though I was 20 years old. Larissa, a survivor, says, I'm not sure that I would be a fully functioning, filled with love, trusting, wide-eyed human without it. So these themes are reflective, these quotes are reflective of the theme that many participants reported that restorative justice changed the way that they behave, and also their self-concept, how they see themselves, how they see others. Many people, participants and facilitators, said that restorative justice training or participating in the process meant they started helping other people. So you can see here, an offender, Arnold, said, restorative justice is all about restoring people to wholeness. Now he is doing work as a counselor as a way of giving back. And so restorative justice directly impacted his life choices around employment. This victim, who then went on to become a facilitator, said he uses restorative justice in daily life. This was a very strong theme as well. And this idea, or this theme around restorative justice enriching one's life, was quite strong, that it certainly did have resonance for many participants outside of the process. So we asked participants directly what they wanted to say to the government, because we were being funded by the government. What would you like to say to them about restorative justice? And these themes are in order of strength. Much more education, training, and evaluation is required of restorative justice. Many of the participants were quite blunt. They just said, it helps, it works. That's what we want government to know. Not surprisingly, many participants called for greater funding, more access for more people in more situations, flexibility, restorative justice being more available in schools with youth, and this idea of connecting restorative justice to other services, recognizing restorative justice is only one thing that people might need, that it should be connected to other sources of support and healing. And so some of the promising practices that we can extrapolate from the data is that it is much more helpful for participants when they're offered processes that are flexible and responsive. So person-centered versus process-centered, and RJV has been doing that for a long, long time. Lots of careful preparation, time, making sure particularly victims and survivors are being given lots of time, lots of opportunity to process and take things at their own pace. Clarifying expectations. What can restorative justice do? What can't it do? That was very important. Safety, ensuring facilitators are well-trained and skilled. Again, this theme around connecting to other community resources, that an RJ program is not the be-all and end-all, that there has to be other relationships with helping services in the community. Victim-centered practice. Cultivating relationships with referral sources was seen as really important for getting quality referrals, and of course, voluntariness and confidentiality. So I guess one of the things that I'd like to say, just in closing, is that the results of this research frustrated me, because we know these things already. Nothing I've said should come as a surprise of anyone who is interested and looked at all at the data, or just their anecdotal experience, right, about doing restorative justice well, doing it in a culturally responsive, trauma-informed way. So I walked away from that experience doing this project thinking, okay, I'm done. I'm actually done with doing research that says the same thing that we already know. So what I'm much more focused on now is action-oriented research, something that really works with restorative justice practitioners and communities and helps to, let's use these research dollars to help them do something meaningful, practical, that's going to take them into the next into the next phase of whatever the work is that they're doing. And that's what I'm up to now. There was no surprises from this data, and that's not to take away from the incredible work that's being done in the province. It would be very interesting though, one of the limitations of the study is that no one wanted to talk about the bad cases. No one wanted to talk about, the time I messed up as a facility. That was hard data to find. We didn't find any participants that were willing to say, you know what, this didn't really work for me. And that's a major hole in this study. And there is research out there that documents this, lots of it, which is good. And so that's the other closing thing I'd like to say. We need to be listening not only to these beautiful butterfly stories, but we also need to hear about the bullfrogs as well. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to stick around and chat with you for a little longer about the data and the process.
So if anyone has questions for Alana, you could type them into the chat or just unmute yourself and ask, whatever your preference.
I have a question.
Thanks, Darlene.
So trying to figure out great ways to be able to present this data to government. And what have you explored with RJABC or Virja or other groups that could be taking on some advocacy to take the research up the food chain?
Yeah, it's a great point. RJABC recently launched our website, so we've included this study on it. The ministry that funded this study still has not put this report on their own website. So that's not a good sign, right? 2017, 2018. So now we're 2 years later. And it's those kinds of things that become very, very frustrating. You know, what are you doing with this ministry, right? This ministry has $1 million for crime reduction research. Okay, so this was one of just, you know, many different projects that were on the go. I don't know that there's action been taken on any of it. So I really love your point, Darlene, and this is exactly why I have so much passion to be on the board for RJABC, that this should be our job, is to take this data forward and to ask those questions respectfully, but pressing, right? What are you doing with this information? I was interested to see that your CAP funding had been increased to 8,000, and I guess I just wondered when that happened. Jillian, when did that, and was that across the board for all CAP programs or just you guys?
It was increased to $4,000 per municipal region that you cover.
Okay.
So we cover 2 municipalities, Victoria and Esquimalt, and then Oak Bay. So it went from 2,500 to 4,000 to address the insurance issues that have come forward, and also then we, of course, because we covered 2 municipalities, we got double the amount. Yeah, but the 4,000, the increase to 4,000 was province wide. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good sign. It's still peanuts, as we all know, but
an extra $1,500. You can buy yourself a couple more boxes of paper.
Oh yeah, great. I thought you were going to say donuts, but
that too.
Any other questions?
I'll ask a quick question, Alana, if you don't mind. You'd mentioned that gap in the research, and I noticed that as well, both in this research you did here and also in the listening project that was conducted by Department of Justice Canada and Just Outcomes. And so I'm just wondering, I think it's really important to start having a look at when things don't go well and what are the circumstances around that. We're never going to address those challenges and be better able to sort of circumvent them or avoid them in the future, potentially avoiding causing harm and impacting the communities and the public's trust in our work. And so I'm wondering, have there been any conversations about that research in the BC context and where that might happen and how that might happen?
There haven't been conversations about it, but I feel like this next project could uncover some things that are not going well. I have particular concern about the co-optation and lack of critical thinking around decolonizing when I hear some of the restorative justice approaches that are happening. And so I think we're going to wade into that for this next project. So that could be one source, but again, we're only looking at 5 different communities. So obviously that will be limited, but yeah, I think that it will lie with individual programs like yours doing much more robust evaluation. And so I think, again, it would be nice to have a collective discussion, right? An ongoing discussion about how we're evaluating and how do we pull out those stories from participants that, you know, how do we create safety for them to say, you know what, this didn't work for me? Because we're going to hear about it one way or the other, whether it's through murmurings in the community or, you know, whatever the equivalent of a bad Yelp review is for restorative justice, right? We're going to be hearing about these things one way or another. And I just think we owe it to our participants to do all we can to try to keep asking, what could we do better? So I'm sure these individual programs are taking this on, but I think RJABC could do a better job in supporting evaluation work. And then how do we collect all of this together and have a provincial picture? That would be something that I could imagine down the road through some of what we can do with a provincial organization like RJABC.
Great, thanks.
Alana, sorry, it may be a little bit off your research project and that, but you raised it by saying about decolonizing restorative justice. Can you just expand on that a little bit and give me your thoughts on it? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess it just arrived. This has been a concern as I've traveled around the province and the country at different trainings and different conferences. There has been, I think, tensions between non-Indigenous restorative justice initiatives and Indigenous justice initiatives that I think have not been well explored or understood. And so I worry in particular about blanket statements that I hear just all the time that restorative justice is the same as Indigenous justice. And I think that is hugely disrespectful to Indigenous justice initiatives that are part of a much broader agenda, if for lack of a better, much broader goals in terms of self-determination and decolonization. And so I do worry about this collapsing, this sort of whitewashing of restorative justice, just with a token head nod to, oh yeah, it came from Indigenous ways of knowing or Indigenous practices. Just saying that doesn't respect the multitude of Indigenous nations that are in what is now called Canada. So it's those kinds of questions that I think we need to confront head on. And again, going back to RJABC, our newly hired executive director is doing exactly that. And so it's unfortunate that she and a handful of others are the only ones really pushing this conversation forward. So it's my hope that this action research I'm doing will highlight some of these tensions, but also there are really hopeful things going on. There's incredible synergy between Indigenous and non-Indigenous justice initiatives in some of our communities. So we want to tell those stories as well. How can we best serve the justice needs of everyone in our community? And it's going to take a collaborative effort. So those are the stories that we're hoping will come out of this research.
If I could just ask a question, Elena. You know, I think that saying that the program is not working, or this particular case, this didn't work well, I think we need to qualify that, or to, you know, to actually say, what do we mean when we say that? Because I think there might be a bit of a variety of success stories, you know, the success, oh, it was a great one, it was perfect, you know, it ended, how great, this person was able to get through it. And or you know, other comments that are empty in terms of what does that mean, what does success mean, what and what does failure mean, what's happening when it doesn't work. I think I'd love to see that. I mean, you've already given some examples, which is great. And I'd like for us to be able to nail that down so that we can study that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say just if I'd say the nuances in it were the flexibility of being able to be in the driver's seat. But I agree. And we have to be really careful around this. This wasn't, you know, this wasn't meant to be an evaluation per se, but certainly you could, you know, derive some evaluative type measures from it, right? People felt, you know, I had a whole bunch of slides in the original presentation that I did on this data around this idea of closure, right? It's even that there were some people that were like, I got this amazing closure, and there are other people that actually use the F word when referring to closure, and I'm not going to have effing closure ever. And so even in that one metric, if you will, that is not going to be the same. And so we have to, how do we get a sense of, yeah, what are the nuances of what's working and what isn't? It's such a great question. I think that a lot of the work being done around how we evaluate restorative justice is trying to parse that out right now. But if I were to say, going back to the name of the study, how can we honor participants? Well, by asking them what they appreciated. I think the data broke it down pretty well, especially when it came to the facilitators and those qualities, and then about the flexibility of the process, giving lots of time, all of those things. But yes, in terms of outcomes, that's a bit of a different question, isn't it? And yeah, it was interesting how so often participants would speak more about the process than the outcome. And as we know, that those are two things that we could ask about. And sometimes the outcome can not be as good as the process and vice versa. So yeah, there's so much to think about there. Thanks so much, Carol.
Thank you.
So nice to see you. Any other questions?
Okay, looks like everyone's got their answers they're looking for, and we've solved all the problems.
Well, thank you all
Yeah.
for being here and sticking around. It was great to see you all.
Thank you, Alana.
Thank you, Alana, so much. We really appreciate it.
Great. Yeah, again, thanks, Alana. It's wonderful to have you here from so far away, and really appreciate all your work. It's amazing, and it was great to hear how wonderful RJ is. We already know it, as you say, but this work hopefully will get listened to, and you'll be expanding on it. And we have every confidence if anybody can move this forward, it will be you. So thanks again, and I do apologize. Normally we give our guest speakers the coveted I Heart RJ mug, which of course we can't do, so perhaps we can pop one in the mail for you. But thanks and best of luck with your future research. Before we sign off for the evening, I would just like to take a few moments to send out some more thank yous and acknowledgements to all those who've contributed to making our work possible over the past year and so. Of course, we're extremely appreciative for the funders and donors, as were mentioned, because without the money, we can't pay our fabulous staff and do the professional work that we are doing. So thank you to them. And without the referrals, we wouldn't have anything to do. So thank you so much to our police partners and all the individual officers and Crown Councils and others who've referred cases to us over the past year and a half. The reason we have such strong relationships with our referring agencies is because they have such confidence in the abilities of our volunteers, and they respect and value the work that they do. And this past year, especially, as we know, has been extra challenging, and it shows what a skilled, professional, and resilient group of volunteers we have. Thank you so much for everything you do for RJV and our community. And most of all, I would like to thank our wonderful staff. Jillian, it's just, you can't find enough superlatives to describe her. She gives so much to this organization and rises to the occasion no matter what's thrown at her, like a pandemic, with little children at home, and still runs the organization like a superstar. She's one of the most respected voices in restorative justice, not only in British Columbia, but across the country, in fact. And the past 10 years, your leadership has been amazing, strong, vibrant organization, because of her commitment and leadership. So thank you so much to Jillian. 3 cheers for you.
Thank you.
And we're also so fortunate to have Taryn, who is probably the most efficient person I've ever met. As Jillian mentioned, she's been instrumental in ensuring our smooth transition to the new way of delivering our services, and is always ready to take on new challenges. And besides that, she's just an absolute joy to work with all the time. And thank you so much, Taryn. We're so happy to have you. And as we've heard about our, cheer for Taryn. And thank you all this. I was so nervous about having this whole AGM, and Taryn was like, no, it'll be fine. We'll take care of it. And she was right. So thank you, Taryn, for that. We mentioned all the complex case work that is continuing to grow within our organization, and we couldn't do that without the hard work of our complex case workers. I've met them all tonight, but Carol Larson, Jessica Rourke, and our newest team member, Lane Foster, thank you for all this really, really challenging work that you do. It takes an enormous amount of experience and specialized abilities to do it. And because these cases are difficult, they're long, they're hard, they're emotionally challenging and draining. And all of these women bring amazing insight and compassion to everything they do. And I'm so grateful for all the hard work that you do. Many thanks also to our other team members, Tynan Bowser, who is here and has saved the day many a time when we've run into technical issues and is always there for us. Thank you. And we're also looking forward to working with Julie Cormier and Michelle Purchase in the coming months. Welcome aboard. So I can't say enough about the incredible work that our staff does. And on behalf of the board and our entire organization, thank you for everything you do. To all of you who joined us tonight, thank you again for being here and for continuing to support us. We look forward to the day when we can again meet in person and share our stories, celebrate our work, and offer you coffee and donuts. Pants will still be optional, but we'll see you again next year at the AGM. Be safe and be well. Thanks everybody and good night.
Thanks everyone.